So good morning and welcome. It's wonderful to be back here, and I'm so proud of everybody. You didn't let the snow this week keep you from getting here. You didn't let the rain yesterday and last night keep you from getting here. We did good, didn't we? Yeah. It's a really power-filled time of this year. It's just an amazing kind of thing. So much is going on. It's a big time across the world in the Holy Land kind of scheme of things. Today is Palm Sunday. Tomorrow is the beginning of the Jewish holiday known as Passover. We are coming up on Good Friday and then on Easter. So there's a tremendous amount of stuff going on. And that's just the little, if you will, Judeo-Christian belief system. If we go back further than that and we look at Celtic times, we look at other cultures, we look at other teachings, there's other stuff going on. It's rich. Yeah, it's really profound. I couldn't begin to talk about all of the things that are springing forth at this time of the year all over the world. It's really, really powerful. In this teaching, in this Science of Mind thing, we look at a lot of these celebrations and holidays, and we look specifically at the symbolism that is encapsulated in those teachings and in those stories. We look at the Bible, we look at other ancient religious texts, and rather than taking them at simple face value, we look at a metaphorical interpretation, we look at a metaphysical interpretation, we look deeper than just the surface. And of course that's one of the things we're taught to do in this teaching, is to not pay so much attention to the appearance. That the appearance is just the physical thing. And we can all see that, we can all feel it, we can all recognize it. Sometimes we don't want to if it isn't very pleasant. But what we know from looking at this teaching and studying it, that there is so much more going on around us and inside of us and through us and as us and in this entire world. There's a tremendous amount of stuff happening. So today we're going to unpack a little bit about what is called Passover, which is a Jewish holiday. That is, it starts tomorrow, and it is the story of the exodus of the Jewish people out of Egypt, where they got free from the Israelites got free from the Egyptians and wandered around in the desert for 40 years with that dude called Moses. Today, it's celebrated with things like a Passover Seder, which is a special meal where all of the foods, resemble or represent, rather, something specific. And I don't know if anybody in here has ever had the experience of doing a Seder or going to a Seder. It's something I would love to see us start as we continue to grow. I really embody that consciousness that was also the consciousness of Ernest Holmes, where he looked at the different teachings and he brought the things that he saw in all those teachings together and called them Science of Mind. I just think that is an amazing way to celebrate all of life in all its glory. For me, it's very powerful. So Passover is a holiday, and really it is kind of in many ways like our 4th of July, because the thing it stands most for is freedom. It recognizes the freedom that the Israelites obtained from, what essentially was the Egyptians holding them down. The word Passover translates loosely into rejoice. And in his teachings, if you study the Bible much or know much about it, Jesus used this kind of understanding as a way to point out the difference between material man, the thing in the flesh, and spiritual person, and coming away from just the control that perhaps our physical senses sometimes might have over us. So we're going to go back to the beginning. We're going to go back to the time of Moses, and we're going to look at what happened and how does all this, what does it kind of mean for us on a metaphysical level. And at that point in time in Egypt, there was a dude who was in charge, and he was called the Pharaoh. And he was a big shot, and he kind of lived by his word and had all the money and controlled all the troops. And the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, were his slaves, his servants. They did his being. And he was kind of paranoid. He was afraid that they might gain too much power. He had it on good word that there might come a man through the Hebrews, a male child born to them, who would rise into a place of power and would overtake his control and his holdings and kind of squish him. And he didn't want that to happen, so he made the decision that all the male Hebrew children would be murdered at birth. They would be slaughtered. And, I love it, guys, but, sometimes women are really powerful. The way he did this was he went to the midwives, and he got them in his pocket. I guess he paid them off. Isn't this like our political system today? He got the midwives in his pocket, and he said to the midwives, now when a male child is born, I'm giving you money. You take that kid out. Get rid of him. And what he didn't realize, women were a lot smarter than that, okay? That sometimes that female thing is tighter than anything else. And he also didn't realize that those Hebrew women had been given birth to babies on their own without midwives for time beyond mind. And they recognized that something funny was going on. And so they kind of managed to sneak out from under some of his bidding that way. And in the meantime, a child was born to a woman named Jochebed, and she knew what was going to happen. She knew that her child could be killed. And so he got to be 2 or 3 months old, and she said, I can't have this. I'm not going to have my child murdered. This guy is nuts. He's got way too much power, way too much control. So she and her daughter Miriam made a little boat, and they set the child in the boat, and they set him down the river, to go down the river, down the Nile River. Well, he floated for a while, and a little girl found him, a young woman, who happened to be the daughter of the Pharaoh. And she drew him from the water and named him Moses. That name means drawn from the water. And she kept him, she raised him to be her child. And ultimately he grew up, but he knew in his heart that he was not an Egyptian. He knew that his people were the Israelites. And he watched how they were treated really badly. And he didn't like it. It made him really angry. And one day as a young man he got mad and he killed a guard. He just lost his temper and killed somebody who had abused one of the Israelite slaves. And he knew then he was really in hot water. The Pharaoh was going to kick his butt. Granddaddy was going to get him, okay? So he took off. He went to a place called Midian, and he married a woman named Zipporah. And he decided to kind of, you know how you ever kind of like want to hide in the crowd? Well, he went out and hid on the field. He became a shepherd, okay? And he took care of his sheep, and he did his thing, and he was out there with the sheep, and kind of a soul, lonely kind of existence, okay? Not too many people finding him and telling the Pharaoh where he was. Well, one day he would come upon this bush, and supposedly the story is that the bush was on fire, but the fire was not consuming it. And he thought, this isn't right. Maybe I, ate the wrong kind of weeds or something, the wrong mushroom. Who knows, right? I don't know if they had mushrooms in the desert then. But as he was pondering this, he heard this voice say to him, Moses, oh Moses! It called his name 2 times. And in metaphysics, that is a special thing. If you say something once, that is ordinary. If you say it again and you say it a second time repeatedly like that, Moses, Moses, that denotes in metaphysics a strong connotation and an extraordinary meaning to that. So he heard this voice calling his name, and he was like, this is weird. Okay, maybe it's mushrooms, but whatever. And the voice said, you got to go back. You got to go back to the Pharaoh. You are the one, dude. You get to go back to the Hebrews and get them out of captivity, because if you don't do this, nobody will. And Moses was just a shepherd. He didn't have a lot of self-confidence. The story goes, this just came to light, I don't know, in the last couple of years that I heard it, that he had a really bad speech impediment. And he kind of went, God, I'm not the one. You'd be wrong about this. Not me, dude, okay? I'm just a nobody. And God said, wrong, it is you. He was told in that moment to take off his sandals, to take off his boogie shoes, okay, that he was standing on holy ground. Well, he got quiet and he listened. And he sucked it up. And he went back to the Pharaoh and he said, you're going to have to do something here. These people cannot live in slavery. And the Pharaoh said, no, I'm not listening to you. So Moses said, okay, let's watch this. And he turned the water of the Nile into blood. That would do me in. Okay, I would be thinking, now, better go back and get some more of those mushrooms. Things are not working out well here, are they? Or whatever. The Pharaoh didn't budge. And so Moses went on to take his staff and to create plague after plague after plague. All kinds of really heavy things, like, okay, a heavy-duty frog plague and locusts. I think we've all heard of the locusts, haven't we? Some of us know about that. Diseases with the cattle that I guess took them out. Problems with hail and darkness. But there was a 10th and final plague, and in that plague, the child, the male heir of the Pharaoh, was killed. He died. And so in a new thought and a science of mind understanding, what we see there is we see the law of cause and effect. What goes out, what we put out, what we think, what we feel, what we believe, what we know in our hearts, that is what is going to come back to us. That is what we teach in the science of mind movement. There's some other interesting metaphysical connotations here. When God said to Moses through the burning bush, you need to go back to the Pharaoh, you need to go back to your people, you need to take care of them, you are the one. And Moses said, I can't do this. God said, well, you're not alone. I'm going to send two things, two people, the presence of two things with you. One is your brother Aaron. The other is your sister Miriam. If we translate those, Aaron is strength and Miriam is intuition. And so what we get on a metaphysical level is that no matter what turn we are in our lives, what faces us, what something looks like, we always have that strength if we will only dust the dust off and recognize that we have that intuition. We have that capacity to do just like what Moses did, to sit in the silence and just give it a moment and let the truth come to us, because it is always ours. There is no place where God is not. Another amazing thing that I like about this is that the interpretation of the word Egypt is a narrow space. So we see Egypt functioning as a plague, an obstacle, a narrow space in the face of the Israelites. And haven't we all known narrow spaces at times? Haven't we all faced things where we went, I can't do this anymore, I don't know how, don't know who, don't know what, only to have things shift in a moment's notice. So finally, Moses created a lot of grief for the Pharaoh. And finally the Pharaoh said, all right, go, get out of here. So they all fled toward the Red Sea, and the soldiers went after them. And we know the story, that they passed through the sea was parted. We've all seen the cartoons, right, of Moses and the things that happened. And I don't know if you've ever seen the one, but there's one where Moses and he's a kid and they're out fishing, okay? And they got their fishing lines down in the water. And so what Moses does is he parts the water right where his companion's fishing line drops into the ocean so that he doesn't get any fish. And the friend says, come on, Moses, get over it. We know he didn't have an easy time. He led these people in the desert for supposedly 40 years. What the cartoon says, if you can't see it, is, behold the land of milk and honey. He's really excited. We finally got here, guys, after 40 years of wandering around the desert. And what the crowd says is, well, we're vegans, no milk for us. So, but we have all had our 40 years in the desert. The thing that's really interesting, and there's a huge amount of rich stuff with all of this, and of course I couldn't find the book I wanted at the time that I wanted it, but there's a wonderful, wonderful text called The Hidden Mystery of the Bible that is about the Old Testament. It is a book written by Jack Addington, who was someone who was alive in, well, maybe not this century, but just the last one, okay, recently. And it is about the metaphysical interpretation of the Old Testament, and it is phenomenal. The number 40. Of course, the number 7, the chakra system, all of these things, the numbers have tremendous implication. Just the darkness and the light and all of that is really a lot of rich interpretation around that. Metaphysically, though, if we look at this story, we could look at Egypt as being kind of the modern day 9-to-5 hamburger stand reality. This thing here in the flesh. And what we can see is that metaphysically, a lot of times we become slaves to an Egypt that takes the form of our possessions. We want a bigger life, we want a bigger house, we want a grander car, we want to go to Europe and travel, not just to see family. We want to do all kinds of wonderful things. And so we reach out there for those things, and in the process, sometimes we become the slaves of those things. We work till we literally are dropping just to have, a 5,000 square foot house or a couple of vehicles in the driveway. Those things become our pharaohs, if you will. The story of Exodus is really about personal power and about freedom. Moses represents a shift in our consciousness. And remember, he took on a job he didn't want. He was filled with doubt. Have you ever had that feeling? Who hasn't? We've all been there, haven't we? Probably more than not. Where were you called or compelled to a task that you weren't sure you could handle? Moses had all those same feelings. If the story is true, and we don't know, you can look at it in any light you like. He had a tremendous task in front of us. When he was called to leadership, he said, "Who, me? I can't do that. I'm not capable. I don't know how." But it was through the process of stepping up to that one little step and saying, "Okay, I'll go back and deal with the Pharaoh. Okay, I'll shake this staff and maybe something magical will happen and the Pharaoh will think I did it, Okay, I'll say to these people, let's go toward the Red Sea. And when we get there, I don't know, maybe something will happen." We never have the whole picture at the beginning of the experience, do we? And it was through the liberating of the Hebrew people that he grew into leadership. We are every one of us Moses. We all have our brothers and our sisters. We have our strengths and we have our intuitions, no matter what we are called to do. And I love this about our teaching. Michael Bernard Beckwith, from the biggest New Thought church in this world, on this planet at least, says that God doesn't choose the qualified. He qualifies the chosen. You only have to say yes. And it might not be to some big grand thing. It might just be to getting out of bed in the morning. Or looking at your phone and going, well, I don't really want to talk to that person, but okay, hello, and biting the bullet, so to speak, and doing it. It is within each and every one of us to move through the I can'ts, to look the why me's in the face and tell them to go away. It is within each and every one of us to say, yeah, I'll step up. I can do this. I've taken off my shoes, for I get that wherever I am, wherever we are, this is holy ground. Passover is the story of a man and a people, and it is the story about what it is about to be called. You would not be sitting in this human body. You would not be in the center this morning if you had not been called. Each and every one of us is called by the divine. The question is, are we listening? Are we answering? And you know what? I found this out too. It's real okay to say, I ain't doing it, dude. Forget it. I don't know what you are, but my answer is no. Because the opportunity will swing back around if it is ours to do. We are loved that much. That reading that Stacy read is so true. There is no place where we are judged, where it is right or wrong. It is just within us to know as much as we can know in every successive moment that we can always say yes. That whatever it is to, the answer is always yes. And those things that look like plagues, I want to tell you what, we got big, rich, full toolkits. We have the capacity to uncreate every bit of that. And just like Stacy's reading said earlier, we have the opportunity to look at things through the lens of our choosing. When I think about this, I always think about going to the eye doctor. And you get up there in the big chair he's got, them things. If you had one of those to watch TV, and you probably never get out of it, right? They're so comfortable. But he gets you in the chair, and he gets that big black thing positioned in front of your face and rests it kind of on your nose there. And then he starts flipping lenses, doesn't he? He's like, which is better, this or this? Which is better, this or this? Okay? It's like the one where the bill goes down, dude. Or where this visit is free, or you give me money for coming in to be your patient. How about that, okay? We can uncreate things by choosing the lens through which we look at them. Wayne Dyer tells us, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. Yes, they do. They get different, We can look at things that are going on in our lives as opportunities or as plagues. And whenever I think about this, I think about that most profound story. I can't remember where this is from. It's some movie, and I know many of you have watched it with us here. The story is of a woman that is, I think she's English, and I believe she's an osteopath. And she wants to have a child really, really bad. She's a young woman and she's married. Well, she wants a child so bad. And her husband is so profoundly against it that she decides to get rid of him. She just divorces him. Fine, dude, I'm having a kid. Are we clear on this? Okay, well, in the meantime, she develops this condition where she has these raging headaches. And they get worse and worse and worse. And, she's kind of not sure about what to do about, creating a baby in her own world and that kind of thing, and being a single parent. But she goes to the doctor for these headaches, and through the testing that they do, it is revealed that she has a very unusual type of tumor that creates the headaches and disarrays her whole hormonal balance to where she cannot conceive. And she thought, isn't it just bizarre that here I am, and the thing that I feel drawn the most to be a mother, to have a child, I have literally created the antithesis of, the antichrist of, in my own life. Well, she was a tough woman. I got a bunch of them sitting in this room. They're sitting next to tough men, okay? We would get up and go, hell no, I ain't going. I'll fight that. You watch this. I'm God in form. I create my world. She probably did that for years. And finally, one day she woke up and she said, I can't beat this. I surrender. I give up. Whatever this thing is that is in my world, this condition that seemingly will not move, you are here to teach me something. You are here for a purpose. I don't know what it is, but tell me now. Okay, I want to know. And she began to listen to what her body and her deepest self, her intuition and her strength had to say to her. And over a period of time, her whole life changed. She went and got involved in things like neuro-linguistic programming and became much more aware of herself on kind of a soul level, really began to listen to herself on a deep, deep level. And she noticed over time that the headaches began to fade. One day she was back in the doctor's office and he did some more blood work, and she said, I don't understand what's going on here, but the headaches are gone. And he said, well, that only means one thing, the tumor's gone. And it was. The blood work revealed it. She moved through that, not by fighting it, but saying, okay, tell me what you have to teach me. When she changed the way she was looking at that tumor, the very nature of that condition dropped away. And we have the power, every one of us, to be that, do that. We are that. So that is one of the ways we get rid of those plagues. We can literally uncreate it. Another way that we can uncreate something that looks like a plague or an obstacle in our lives is to just begin to recognize that we had a hand in bringing that about. Now, I don't know about you guys, but, I came into this movement, and one of the first things I read was Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, okay? I still, my response to that book after I read it, and I got it, that I actually had a hand in creating the mess, in a capital M, mess that my life was in, was that I was infuriated and aggrieved, and so much so that when the person who loaned me the book came back over, I threw it at him. I did. He will verify that, okay? I can actually tell you that it was in June of 1986, standing in my living room on Christopher Lane, okay? He laughed. He knew to keep, good physical boundary. He knew I was crazy at that point in my life. But I began to recognize I have a hand in creating everything that's going on. And here's the big boat that a lot of people miss with that. We begin to think, well, hell, if I created it, bad little me, naughty little me, get better at this, okay? There is no room for blame in this. There is no room for self-condemnation. There is only room for love. There's only room for love. The co-founder of Unity had familial tuberculosis. She was dying. She was in her 40s. Unity, of course, is a very similar teaching to what we teach here. She went and heard a Christian Science practitioner. So if you think they're weird, embrace it. Embrace the fact that you think that, and embrace the fact that maybe they are, okay? And embrace the fact that that whole thing spawned a whole huge component of new thought known as unity today. She went and heard a Christian Science practitioner who basically communicated to her that love would heal everything. And she went home, and every night she got in bed, she worked on loving herself. She worked on loving every cell in her body. She worked on loving the cells in her lungs. She worked on loving that sickness, and she loved it right out of her life. Okay? So if we change the way that we are thinking about things, and we change the way that we are dealing with them in our lives, we literally will change the nature of what's going on in our life. And that is easy, and we do it here every day, don't we? It's phenomenal. So this is Passover. One of these years, we'll be doing a Seder meal, I hope. Not too many more years. I think that would be amazing. We could learn a lot about it, and I would love it. We remember to move through this time making decisions that are really coherent, that are really conscious, that involve a very deep sense of personal freedom. You are not the person you were yesterday. You got up this morning and you came back into this experience of life. I don't know where we go when we sleep, but I ain't around. I don't know about that, okay? Or maybe we are. Maybe we're just out. But I believe we literally have the opportunity to recreate it every single day. We get up new. Change your point of view about what you think you are, about what you think you can do, about who you think you are, and move from there, from a place of liberation, from the enslavement of the things that control us, those inner beliefs, the stuff, the mortgage, the pets, the family, the creations that we have made. Remember who you are. What is your mission here? You are here for a very special purpose. I know what mine is, but I can tell you that it's changed more than once in the last 25 or 30 years. If you don't know why you're here, I love you. Go home, sit down, and shut up, and put on your seatbelt, as the saying goes, and just ask, what is mine to do? What am I here to do? And then just listen and try not to throw anything at what comes back. Okay? Don't throw the book at the messenger. Okay? We are here, every one of us, if for no other reason than to be the vehicles for the expression of the divine. As the Kabbalah puts it, to raise sparks of holy light, to bring about Tinkan Olam, the healing or the repair of this world. So be who you came here to be, do what you came here to be, and let's light up the planet. I love you. Thank you.